Hi everyone, I'm Liam. Today I want to talk about why is the US dollar the world's main currency? So, have you ever been traveling, maybe in some market halfway across the world, and you see it? That familiar green piece of paper, the US dollar. It's kind of weird when you stop and think about it, right? How did this one country's currency end up becoming the world's money? Well, it turns out the answer is this incredible story of power, strategy, and believe it or not, a single hotel in New Hampshire. And you know, this goes way beyond just tourism. This piece of paper is the absolute bedrock of global trade, finance, and power. It is, for all intents and purposes, the currency of the world. And figuring out how it got to be that way, well, that tells us an amazing story about history, about power, and ultimately, about trust. The numbers here are just staggering. Right now, nearly 60% of all the money that governments around the globe hold in reserve is in US dollars. Now, a dominance like that doesn't happen by accident. Oh no, it was carefully, deliberately designed in the ashes of a world at war. Okay, so let's go back. The year is 1944. The world is just desperate for a way to rebuild, to find some kind of stability in all the chaos. And the answer, the blueprint for the next half-century, was hammered out in a hotel. We're going to follow the dollar's wild ride through three really key moments. First, its coronation at Bretton Woods, when it was tied to gold. Then, the shocking moment that link to gold was just severed. And finally, its brilliant reinvention through a new partnership, with oil. You see, the genius of the Bretton Woods system was how simple it was. The US had most of the world's gold, so it made a promise to everyone. Your dollars are literally as good as gold. For every $35 you had, there was 1 ounce of real, physical gold sitting in a US vault. This created a super stable anchor that the entire world could peg their own currencies to, and most importantly, trust. But, you know, promises, especially massive global economic ones, can be really hard to keep. And as the world started to change, that golden promise from 1944 began to look, well, a little shaky. By the late 60s, the US was spending a ton of money, printing more and more dollars to pay for the Vietnam War and programs at home. And other countries? They started to do the math. They looked at the mountains of dollars they were holding. Then they looked at America's shrinking pile of gold, and they got nervous. So nations like France started calling America's bluff, saying, "Okay, thanks for the paper. Now we'd like our gold back, please." Nixon saw a potential run on the bank that could completely empty Fort Knox. So in 1971, he went on television and did the unthinkable. He just unilaterally broke the promise that the entire global economy had been built on for over 25 years. The gold window was slammed shut. And just like that, poof, the dollar became what's known as a fiat currency. Its value was no longer tied to a shiny physical thing. Instead, it was now backed by something much more abstract: faith. Faith in the US government, faith in its economy, and its stability. I mean, this was a massive shift. We went from a world of tangible security, money backed by actual gold, to a world of institutional confidence, where it's all backed by trust. A lot of people thought this would be the end of the dollar's reign, but they were very wrong. With its golden anchor gone, the dollar needed a new one, and it needed it fast. What the US did next was one of the most brilliant strategic pivots in economic history. It tied its currency not to yellow metal, but to black gold. The deal itself was kind of simple, but totally profound. The US went to oil-rich nations like Saudi Arabia and said, "We'll offer you military protection." In return, those nations agreed to sell their oil only in US dollars. And just like that, any country that needed oil, which is, you know, every country, had to buy US dollars first. This created a massive, constant, built-in demand for the currency. So, the petrodollar system basically saved the dollar's neck. But that powerful foundation allowed for even stronger pillars of dominance to be built over the years, creating the invisible empire the currency has today. This dominance gives the United States a unique power. a power so significant that a French finance minister famously called it an exorbitant privilege. So what does that actually mean for people? Well, it means the US can basically just print money to buy things from other countries. Meanwhile, those other countries have to actually work and produce real goods and services to earn those same dollars. For Americans, this can mean cheaper imported goods. But the flip side is that it can also fuel these huge, persistent trade deficits, which could be a real vulnerability down the road. Today, the dollar's power really rests on three modern pillars. First, there's the sheer size and depth of US financial markets. You can buy or sell trillions of dollars worth of assets instantly without messing up the price. Second, it's seen as the ultimate safe haven. When a global crisis hits, where does money run to for safety? The dollar. But maybe the most powerful pillar is the network effect. Basically, everyone uses it because everyone else is already using it. To really get the power of that network effect, just think about this. Something like 80% of all global trade is financed in dollars. So picture a coffee company in Brazil selling beans to a buyer in Japan. Neither country uses the dollar as their currency, right? But chances are, that deal is getting done in US dollars. It's just become the default language of global business. But, as we all know, no empire lasts forever. And today, for the first time in a very long time, people are asking some serious questions about the future of the dollar's dominance. And if you look at the data, you can see a clear, if gradual, trend. The dollar's share of global reserves has slipped from over 70% back in the early 2000s to just under 60% today. So this whole de-dollarization thing, it's real. But let's be clear, even with that decline, the dollar is still light years ahead of any potential rival. So, while the dollar's reign isn't over by a long shot, its future is definitely more up for debate. And that leaves us with this huge, fascinating question. What comes next? What would a world without one single dominant currency even look like? Would it be more stable and fair, or just a lot more chaotic? That really is the multi-trillion-dollar question for the 21st century. I hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. See you in the next one. Take care.